My name is Jerry Gill. Today is May 24th, 2010. I'm visiting with Dr. George Oberle in his home here southeast of Tulsa. This interview is for the Old State Stories Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. George, I appreciate you taking time to visit with us this afternoon.
Jerry, my pleasure.
You served as head of the Department of Health, Physical Education, and Leisure Services at Oklahoma State University from 1974 to 1993, so for nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
A very pivotal time for the department, and I'd like to visit with you a little bit about the department, specifically about administration of women's sports programs, transfer of women's sports from HPLS to the Department of Intercollegiate Athletics, and around those topics, okay?
Right.
But first, what I'd like to do, George, I'd like to go back and kind of find a little about your early life, your professional career before you got to Oklahoma State. Can you start with where you grew up and your family?
Yeah, I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, and graduated from Decatur Central High School in Indianapolis, small rural high school, southwest Indianapolis, and then went on to Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana, which is a small Quaker school, about 1,000 students, and played football and basketball and baseball there. And then from there I went to, once I graduated from Earlham College, I took my first head coaching job at Mooresville, Indiana, as head football coach and head baseball coach at Mooresville, Indiana. I was there from 1953 to 1954, I guess it was, or no, 52 to 53. And Earlham called and said that they had an opening on their staff. Would I come back and be a part of their staff? And of course, being my alma mater, I thought, wow, look at this. An ideal opportunity. So I said yes. And so I went back as head baseball coach and assistant football coach at Earlham from 53 to 56, I think it is, thereabouts. And then in 56, I got a call from a brand new high school, which was opening up then in Indianapolis, called North Central High School. North Central High School was just starting, and they were trying to get a staff together. And I said, yeah, I would come. And I was there from 56 to 58 as their head baseball coach and assistant football coach, and again, the director of their summer recreation program. And then in 58, Earlham called back and said, would you come back? And I said, well, I'm hard to cut those strings of your old alma mater. And I said, yeah, I would. So I went back as athletic director and head football coach and head baseball coach. I was there 2 years until 1960, and then 1960 I got a call from Marion, Indiana, saying that they were looking for a person to head up their athletic department. They had 3 junior highs, 11 elementary schools, 3 junior highs, and a high school. That they wanted an athletic director, a coordinator of athletics, and would I come down and be that? So I said, well, that's an unusual opportunity. So I said yes. So I went to Marion, Indiana, and became their athletic director for their school system, and was there from I guess that would have been from 60 to 62. And then in 1962, Indiana State called and said, we have an opening at our staff at Indiana State University. Would you consider coming over? And I said, well, that's a university. That's okay. I'll take that opportunity. So I went to Indiana State University as assistant football coach and assistant baseball coach, and was there 9 years, and decided that I would go back and get the doctor's degree. I gave up my coaching after about 5 years, and went back and got the doctor's degree because our son was getting ready to participate in high school sports, and I wanted to see him participate. So as a coach, you're always on the road recruiting, or you're always on the road doing something, but I felt like I needed to come and spend some more time with him. So I went back and got the doctor's degree and became the assistant dean of the School of Health, Physical Education and Recreation at Indiana State for about the last 3 years I was there. Then I got a call from Chicago State University, and Chicago State said, would you be interested in coming up and being our athletic director and chairman of our department? And I said, well, okay, I've never been to Chicago, so I'll go to Chicago. So I went to Chicago, and I was up there 3 years, and then got the call from Oklahoma State in 1974, saying that they had an opening on their staff, and asked me if I would be interested in coming down and interviewing at Oklahoma State. And I said, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. I told my parents, when they heard that we were thinking about coming to Oklahoma, they said, you're not going to take our grandkids away from us, are you? And I said, well, yeah. We're just going to be down there 3 or 4 or 5 years, and we'll be back up here in Indiana. Well, almost 20 years later, we never got back to Indiana. So from 74 to 93, I was at Oklahoma State, and it was some of the best times of our lives.
Well, let me back up and ask you a couple questions about your family when you grew up. What'd your dad do?
My dad had to go to work when he was a sophomore. He dropped out of high school, had to go to work because his father died. He had to help support his mother and 2 sisters. So he dropped out of school and went to work at a creosoting company in Indianapolis, and went from just being, again, a yard person to eventually becoming manager of their plant there. Wow. So he spent his whole entire life with the Republic Creosoting Company. Very rarely is that done anymore, where one person spends their entire years of employment with one company. But he did. Never got his high school degree, but it didn't stop him from being the quality of man that he was.
And did your mother work outside the home?
No, part-time. She did. She was a night telephone operator for a couple of years, and she got the kids to bed. She went over to the telephone office, which was about maybe 100 yards from our home, and she had a cot there that she slept in all night. Was the night telephone operator, and then that's when when they would call in, and with 2 longs and a short. That tells you what the stage of that telephone situation was. But then later she quit that and did part-time postmistress at the post office there in the little community that we were in.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had 2 brothers and a sister. My sister is 3 years younger than she's now deceased, 3 years younger than I. My oldest brother was 6 years younger than I, and then I have a brother who's 20 years younger than I. Wow. Who happens to be an OSU graduate and is still coaching at Decatur Central, our old alma mater, back in Indianapolis. Yeah. So my brother and both brothers, they were much better athletes than I. My oldest brother Jerry was all county and in both football and basketball, and my youngest brother David was all state and all county in both football and basketball, and went to Oklahoma State to Indiana State. I'm sorry, to Indiana State on a scholarship. So,
you know, in high school, you said you played football, basketball, baseball.
Yes.
High school.
Yeah.
Question I had: Did the girls play? Did they have sports for girls at that time?
No, they really didn't. There really wasn't in the high school level, and that was back in '46, about 45 to 48. Now, that's the period of time that I was in high school, and there really wasn't much in the way of sports participation for girls at all. And there wasn't even play days. Play days came more on the college level and later on than the high schools. Really, there wasn't much at all.
George, you shared, and I appreciate you shared information about your career up to Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
What was it? I understand the sports background for coaching and being involved, but where did you interest in physical education as a academic career? Where did that come from?
Well, it came from, I started, when I went to Earlham, my folks wanted me to be pre-med. So I started in pre-med. Just didn't want just didn't want that. And so then I said, well, Mom and Dad, I think I want to switch to pre-dentistry. And they said, okay. And so I switched to pre-dentistry, and then I got to thinking, do I want my hands in people's mouths 8 hours a day? And I said, well, no, I just don't think I want that either. So then I just decided the fact that what do you like to do? And I liked sports, and I liked, again, the nature of sport. So I said, I think I'd like to become a physical educator, because at that point in time, to be a coach, you almost needed to be a physical educator. And so I just became prepared in physical education to go out and to coach, and that was my first love, was coaching at that point in time.
You were at Indiana State. You said you want to kind of get out of the coaching a little bit to have more time with your son.
Yeah.
Is that when you looked at moving into administration?
I think it was simply because if I'm going to spend the money going to get the doctor's degree, I need to make that work. Mm-hmm. And to do that, you need to get into the upper echelon of administration. And so once I made the decision to give up my coaching and then go back and get the degree, then my goals switched to becoming department chairs, or people who help determine policy, set policy, and to run programs.
George, you talked about Oklahoma State in '74. You were appointed the position of chairman of what is now Department of Health, Physical Education, and Leisure Sciences. What do you remember about the search? I mean, how did you find out about it, and can you tell me about the search process?
Yeah, sure. When it was a Department of Physical Education at that point in time. Okay. My predecessor, I've lost that one. Valerie Colvin was still alive at that point in time, who Colvin Center is now named after. And she was there at that point in time. How I got there, got a call from the search committee, and indicated the fact that they were looking for a person to chair that Department of Physical Education, and would I be interested? And I said, well, I didn't know that Oklahoma. I'd never been to Oklahoma before. And I heard that's where tornadoes are put together and sent up our way, being Chicago. And they said, well, yes, that's true. We do have tornadoes here. But a tornado has never hit Stillwater in all the years of Stillwater. And I said, okay. So I said, well, yeah, we'll come down and visit with you. My first interview with them was done in Las Vegas. They had a search committee. We were going to the national meeting, and they said, if you don't mind, we'd like to meet with you in Las Vegas and just kind of do a preliminary interview.
Can I back up and ask you? So you were assistant director or physical education department at that time, and were you known, and sort of had you gone to I'm trying to figure out how Oklahoma State University knew you and contacted you.
Well, professionally, I was quite active professionally.
The National Association.
Okay. And so, I started to establish a reputation, I think, in program development and design. And so, I think it's a matter that they did some homework. A lady by the name of Ruth Lindsay and I went to Indiana University together when we were doing our doctoral degree. And I don't know how much influence she had. But Chuck Shelsky, who was on staff and director of the Colvin Center at that point in time, was again from Indiana, and we knew one another casually. But so I guess as my name again appeared on the interviews. In fact, I was told, I don't know, this is secondhand now, I can't verify this, but the fact that they couldn't decide on a person. They had a very difficult time because student services had one function of the position, academics had a function of the position, and then women's intercollegiate athletics was just starting to come on board at that point in time. They had play days, and it was not well organized, and that was kind of in the so I found out in my interview. I had interviewed Norman Moore for student services, George Grease in academics. He was dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. Dean, I've forgotten the Dean of Education, where our doctoral program was. Our doctoral degree program was in education. And Floyd Gass was in athletics. And so
that was the committee.
But that was the people I interviewed with when I came on campus.
Okay.
So I interviewed the folks in Las Vegas, and they came back, and I wasn't, maybe a couple of days, I got a call from Dean Grease's office saying, could you come down and let us interview you? And I said, okay. So they flew Marie and I down, and we went and interviewed with the people that I'd indicated that we interviewed with. And a short time later, they offered the job. And so it was during that period of time that, and I also interviewed with Dr. Com, and he was the one who, again, asked me about my interest in women's intercollegiate athletics as to whether or not I felt like that this was something that I would feel comfortable with. And I said, yeah, I feel comfortable with that. And so I think the fact that I had the breadth of both academics and athletics and administration of those programs is probably what led me to Oklahoma State.
George, did you indicate that you interviewed with Floyd Gass, who was the athletic director at the time? What was you recall your discussion about women's intercollegiate athletics when you visited with him?
Well, I think he felt like that, boy, that's your bailiwick. I want you to have it. I think Floyd was felt like that the men's program is where he belonged, and I think that he just he could probably see some of the problems that coordination of men's and women's programs. And Title IX was not necessarily really on board with a full-fledged emphasis at that point in time.
You passed in in 72.
In 74.
In 74?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this was set in 1974. And so, when I came on board, they said, now, George, you'll have the academic program, you'll be in charge of the Colvin Recreation Center, you'll be in charge of the graduate program, and you also will be in charge of the women's intercollegiate program, such as it is. At that point in time, all we had were play days, and most of the staff in the academic area they were the coaches, really the coordinators. They are the bus drivers or the car drivers or whatever. They just they weren't hired coaches. The coaching was not women's coaching. Was not in the picture at that point in time.
Can you mentioned you visited with President Com. What was President Com's position on women's intercollegiate sports? Do you recall?
My recollection is the fact that he was in full support. In full support simply because he knew that eventually would be here. And I have the greatest respect for Bob Com. He was an intellect.
Yes. George, we talked about your position at Oklahoma State University being a transitional period. What can you discuss what the status? You alluded to some of that in the coaching, but what was the status of women's sports? For example, start off with what sports were being offered that were competing intercollegiately, not just intramural. Do you remember?
Let me go back and say that when I got there, there was a Department of Physical Education, and Recreation had just started a recreation program academically, a 4-year program in recreation. I did a year's study of the department in, again, trying to figure out how all of this could be put together. And so with staff's help, we devised a program to become a school of health, physical education, and leisure services. And And we did that, again, with the idea that we would be able then to embrace all the different aspects with a structure that would have direct leadership. Women's intercollegiate athletics, first women's intercollegiate athletic director was Dr. Betty Abercrombie. Okay, she was our first one. So when I went in, I said, I'd like for you to be the coordinator. Well, she wasn't a director; she was coordinator of women's intercollegiate athletics, because I was acted as the director, but she was the coordinator, kind of coordinated. Now, what was there then in 1974? Play days.
Can you explain play days in that?
Okay, play days would be Central State would call and say, you want to come down and let's have a play day with the women? Okay, and so they'd come down, we'd load up some women who wanted to go down and play, and they'd play maybe basketball or field hockey or softball, or just they would predetermine what they wanted to play. And they'd go down and they'd just play for a day and then come back. And that was the nature of women's intercollegiate athletics in 1974, was play day. And the rules governing that were rules governed by both AIAW and DGWS. DGWS was Division Girls and Women's Sports, and that was a council within the American Association for Health, Physical Education, and Recreation, which at that point in time was the national organization. So DGWS through AIAW pretty much ran women's intercollegiate sports for a period of time. And then as time went along, DGWS kind of faded out, AIAW kind of took over, and then later, when we'll talk about that period of transition, AIAW then went to NC2A. So, but in 74, that it was just basically women's sports were just basically play days.
George, I'm kind of letting you hear that I got from Angie Sears' book on the center. Field hockey, volleyball, basketball, tennis, golf, swimming and diving, track and field, softball, and gymnastics. Does that sound like what you remember?
Yeah, I think so. I tried to, when you called, I tried to put these things together. Yeah. Volleyball was one of the early sports. Swimming. Once we set the organization for women's intercollegiate sports and set it up to run as a sports program, we then started to add all these programs. And volleyball was added, swimming, field hockey was there, softball, golf, tennis, gymnastics, track and field, basketball. And then those were basically the sports that we participated or used.
And you talked about earlier that primarily the coaches here were PE instructors. They were just also doubling up as coach in the sports that
That's right. They had an interest, and they carried. Pauline Winter, Betty Edgley. Let's see, who else was? Well, J.C. Showers was. Well, I can give you the background. Our first volleyball coach was, again, Frankie Alberts. I don't know where Frankie is now, but Frankie was there. And when volleyball was dropped, and that was back in, that was later in the 1980s, we dropped volleyball and swimming, field hockey.
Gymnastics.
Gymnastics. Gymnastics came a little later after, but volleyball and swimming were the first two to go. And oddly enough, Dr. Richard Young, who was brought on board as athletic director, he was the one that, as we looked at the sports going from our area to his area and what the budget and program could entail, decided that volleyball and swimming were two that probably we could do. And oddly enough, his daughter was on the volleyball team. Talk about tough decisions. Talk about tough decisions.
George, how was the women's sports program at that time different from the men's sports programs?
Well, first of all, we had very little budget. I think, I don't remember exactly what my budget was. I think $20,000
Entire.
with the entire program budget in 1974. We finally got it up to, I think it was around $65,000 to $70,000. But that just wasn't really enough to carry the program. But we didn't pay coaches' salaries. The coaches were, Larry Billhartz was funded out of academics. He was the gymnastics coach. Betty Edsley was a graduate assistant. Oh, Billhartz was a graduate assistant too. Betty Edsley was a graduate assistant, and she got maybe a little bit of extra money out of that $20,000, if you can imagine. They didn't get much. Let's see. I don't remember. Pauline Winter was kind of our first softball coach, and later after Pauline, Sandy Fisher came on board after that. But Pauline, she was again academic, and so she was paid basically out of academics. We hired Coach Cutter. Kind of got women's swimming started, and he had, of course, had the men's program for years and years and years. But we finally hired, again, Jean Chase Farnham. And she was from the East Coast, and she was the first female swimming coach. But shortly after she got there, we dropped swimming. So I think we didn't have it more than 2 or 3 years. But as you can see, most of these women's coaches at that point in time were academic people, and just were paid stipend money for them. No, very low consideration.
How did that differ from the coaches in men's sports?
Oh, well, I think...
I had that.
Yeah, I know you had that. I don't remember exactly what Floyd's budget was at that point in time, but I'm going to guess the basketball coach and J.C. Showers, who was the basketball coach when I got there. She was coaching the women's basketball team. I'm not sure what, I don't remember who the men's basketball coach was, because, but their budget probably was around $4 to $5 million.
Yours was $20,000.
Yeah.
And their coaches were full-time, and they were
full-time coaches, although some of their coaches taught for us. Colonel Cutter was a swimming coach. He taught swimming for us. I had contacted Mike Holder to see if he was interested in coaching the golf team. Mike said he had his hands full and probably would not necessarily want to do that at that point in time. Had all he could. So that's when we hired Ann Pitts. Ann Pitts was brought on board, and she taught for us, taught golf for us, and then was a women's golf coach. So most of these coaches, women's coaches, were paid out of the academic budgets.
George, I picked up on something that the WIA, Women's Intercollegiate Athletic Program, WIA, it was in charge of women's sports under Heupels. Do you recall that?
Yeah, that was basically a recreation. On most college campuses, WI, Women's Intercollegiate Athletics, was, again, the play day experiences that the girls had, and Women's Intercollegiate Athletics, if there were any kind of rewards or acknowledgement, it was done through WIA, and then AIAW then came on board.
Were there any... When you at that time you come on board, was there any such thing as scholarships offered for women's sports or other financial aids?
Yeah, we did. I think I was talking with Betty Edsley about this the other day, and she was saying the fact that I think she said she had 2 part-time scholarships for women's tennis. That would be back in '75. She didn't come on board. We didn't really start the full women's athletic program until 1975, because we took a year to do the study and to frame the structure for women's intercollegiate sports at Oklahoma State. So there was, I know that, and I'm not sure, Ann Pitts probably could tell you what she had beginning, but it was very meager. The scholarship program, men's and women's, was like two things which was very evident. If Title IX was to be adhered to and acknowledged and honored, was going to have to be a major gift for our scholarships, and we're going to have to be service provided women's intercollegiate athletics, like athletic training. We had no athletic trainers in that 75. I finally hired Jean Chase Farnham. Was also not only she had a husband and he was an athletic trainer, so we kind of hired that combination to do limited. But we had no training room. It was all it was taping.
George, speaking of that, it leads me to another question. Could you describe what the facilities were like when you got there for women's intercollegiate sports?
Well, it was Colvin Center was taxed. It has always been taxed from the time I got there, 74, till the time I left. It's always been well used, because then you have the academic program and you have the recreational program, which is second to none. Kent Bunker and before him Gordon Gilbert, those guys have done just an outstanding job in providing recreational and intramural sports for students at Oklahoma State. Outstanding. And then you had not only that program and the academic program all vying for space. You put then women's intercollegiate athletics, so we had to convert. We had to take some of the gyms, and like the gymnastics gym, we had to take away a basketball court and an activity area and devote that totally to women's gymnastics when you put all that athletic equipment in there. And of course, golf and tennis. Tennis we used the courts over by the I've forgotten.
By the old armory.
Yeah, by the old armory. Right, thank you. By the old armory over there until we got the new courts, which are now by the annex. But we had to get in line to use those because the instructional program used those courts for instruction, tennis courts, tennis. Wadley used them for tennis, and that. I think that it was a stress. So much of my time was, I must admit, much of my time as an administrator was trying to make sure that all three areas had enough time to be able to provide programs.
So
we crowded the recreational program. We crowded the academic program to provide, again, a space for women's intercollegiate athletics. But that's the only way it could be done.
Really, to kind of summarize, you had competition with academic courses and PE courses.
Right.
Then you had recreational play, intramural sports,
Right.
etc. Free play.
Yes.
The individual student free play.
Right.
Then you had the women's intercollegiate sports, and in some instances, then even the men's sports you competed with, like
Right.
tennis.
Yeah.
And so on.
Well, you had
that must have been some kind of hassle. How to keep up with it.
Well, it was. We just tried to again do the best we could and to make sure that people understood what was needed at that point in time. Chuck Shelsky, who was the coordinator of the Colvin Center at that point in time, did an outstanding job in helping with that. Chuck did just a tremendous job in assisting me with that. He was the coordinator of the facility. And there were many times he came in and said, "George, can't do that. That's got to be this person's role. Can't crowd those folks." And he and I'd sit down and we'd talk about this. But eventually, so Chuck was very instrumental that we did it right.
Kind of Solomon, you cut that baby in half.
Yeah, right. And sometimes I got to give him the guillotine and say, "Go do it, Chuck."
Well, George, you're talking about, of course, the Colvin Physical Education Center and the Recreation Center. What other facilities were you competing with? Those softball.
Well, track and field.
Track and
We
field.
didn't have basically a softball field at that
What
point.
facilities were you using?
Using a track and field, we eventually got a softball field put in. I think Gross was
We used tennis coach.
he women's tennis coach. Sandy Fisher was probably the one who helped develop the softball field.
So they created the field where the current stadium is now. Right?
Yes.
Field.
Yeah. There was a play field there. This is the play field. If you,
Intramural play field.
yeah, intramural play field, and we kind of played softball on that. But that's where But it was later developed into what we now know as the softball stadium. Yeah. But let's see. We used for women's basketball. We used Colvin Center. We didn't use Iba Hall. For track and field, we used track and field. Swimming, we used.
The track was around the stadium. Was that, or did you have a
No.
track?
Yes, we used the track beginning. We used the track around the football field in the stadium, and then what was the track coach's name? The old timer that
Higgins.
Higgins.
No, it was after Ralph Higgins and then Ralph.
Okay, you're. Well, you know who I'm talking about,
Yes.
or I think you know who I'm talking.
Ralph, I sure did.
Well, anyhow, he got the lady to give some money, and we developed. The university developed the track where it is in existence today. But we've used that. I'm trying to think. Softball, golf, and I'm not sure what Ann did with golf. Hold on.
Larry Bridges.
Well, Larry Bridges was the track coach. Was one of the first track coaches. And I think Ann negotiated time at the country club.
I think she was using Lakeside first part too. She indicated.
Yes. Yeah. I think she, both men's and women's used Lakeside a lot.
Coach, to kind of change subject a little bit, when you did hold competition, when you got past the game day, when you started developing some more professionalism, what kind of attendance would you have typically in a women's athletic event?
Well, we participated basically with the other schools in the state of Oklahoma. We didn't go out of the state much at all those first few years. In fact, field hockey, we were playing high schools because there weren't enough colleges playing field hockey, and we were one of the only few colleges playing field hockey at that point in time. So where would we go? Cassius Hall. We'd go to Oklahoma City and play there. Holland Hall. We'd come to Tulsa and play Holland, or invite them to come to camp.
And so on.
Yeah, and so these were basically public schools, and it was just, again, a play day kind of a situation, but it was concentrated in that one sport.
When you had an event, say on OSU campus, how many people typically would come out? And then not counting participants, but how many spectators would you have?
Well, are you talking about people who would walk by, or are you talking about people who would sit?
You might stay to watch part of the event.
We're in Colvin Center now, remember, for the most part.
Gotcha.
Basketball would draw. Gymnastics would draw. We'd probably draw a couple hundred.
Okay.
Couple
Did you charge admission?
No admission charge. No admission charge. I'm trying to think. No. Volleyball, maybe 100. Friends and family, that if they were local, would be basically fraternity, sorority, brothers and sisters would come and follow the team.
Commiserate with
Yeah,
them.
right, yeah. But that's about it.
We're stepping back, kind of looking at your management, a little broader picture a little bit. When you took the program, you visited with President Common, I guess he was the final probably sign off next to the regents for you being accepted in this position. Did he give you any instructions or any mandate about women's intercollegiate sports?
He just basically said that he was interested in the development of the program and the fact that he would like to see it grow, but he gave no instructions as to how we were to do this, and there was no serious consideration of budget increases and that kind of thing, other than just the limited amount that we got from the men's athletic department. I guess that's where it came from. I am never quite sure where that came from.
What, when you looked at the picture you got, you talked about earlier today that it took you about a year to kind of decide, shape your new program. But what were, from your management perspective, what were your immediate priorities?
Facilities, facility usage. It was so crowded. Colvin Center was so crowded that I wasn't quite sure how we could get this program off and going with the limited facilities that we had. But we did it, and we worked together with the existing male coaches to share facilities like tennis and track, and of course Ann was off campus with the golf, but and we developed the facilities for gymnastics of its own, you know. So again, and swimming was there, and Coach Cutter was, you know, extremely helpful with respect to that. So thanks to the coaches and thanks to the people who were on board, they were helpful. They were helpful. So my management style was basically to go to the coaches or people involved and say, hey, look, we want to start this program. Can you help us? And they did. They rose to the occasion. It's the one thing neat about the staff at Oklahoma State. They have all been really so wonderful. I had the greatest time in my life at Oklahoma State.
Did you have any specific goals or expectations that you set for the program when you took it over? If you had a chance to look at it and said, okay, here's where we want to go. What were your goals?
Yeah, I did. I wanted, first of all, I wanted to build an academic program which was second to none in Oklahoma. I wanted to be the flagship of Oklahoma. In fact, I wanted to be the flagship of the Southwest. I wanted to have an outstanding recreation program so that it would go and grow and be continue the quality that I knew that it had. And women's intercollegiate athletics, that was one that I wasn't quite sure how far we could go, but I wanted to take it as far as we could. I wanted to establish new programs, and I wanted to establish again a core of values for that activity.
What were some of those values, George, that you said you wanted to establish a core of values? What were some of those values?
I wanted the girls to have the best coaching that we could possibly get them. I wanted us to have, again, a program which was representative of Oklahoma State, much like the men's athletic program. We weren't there, but I wanted us to take those steps toward being a top flight athletic program in women's sports. And so those were all, again, goals that I established. And I wanted to again, enhance the facilities, but that was one of the most difficult things I had. Was again, academics was saying that we can't give more money to buildings, brick and mortar, and athletics, men's athletics programs saying we're to capacity now. But student services stepped up. That's how we got the Colvin Annex and the tennis courts. Wadley, with his, again, ability to raise funding, helped with the tennis courts, and the student services funded the annex, which provided, again, other opportunities for Colvin Center release of stress of the use of facilities so we could expand there. And so student services, the students of Oklahoma State University have always responded to needs. They built Colvin Center, they built the annex, and then they just, in the last 10 years, have undergone a total revision of Colvin Center to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. And those are student funds. And so students have always stepped to the plate and taken their turn at bat.
Do you recall, some of your early hires, you talked about Ann Pitts, who are some of the other coaches that you hired and programs you expanded?
Well, as I mentioned, in volleyball, we hired Frankie Alberts. Swimming coach was Coach Cutter for a while. Then we hired Gene Chase Farnham. Field hockey was Pauline Winter, and then later followed by Sharon Homburg, and then we dropped field hockey when Sharon left. And softball, Pauline Winter was there in '74, and then we hired Sandra Fisher and her assistant Margaret Rebner. Both of those. Margaret was a graduate assistant and taught, and was also assistant softball coach for years and years and years. And then we hired Ann Pitts as our first women's golf coach. Betty Edgley was, again, the first women's tennis coach. She was a graduate assistant, and then later when Dick came on board and we made the move of women's intercollegiate athletics, I think around 1980 or thereabouts, when we made the move from going from the program being housed in the School of HPER over until it went into athletics. That's when Dick Young came on board in the 80s or therearound, I think. We gave the staff who were coaching option. You can either stay with academics or you can go to the men's athletic department. And so Ann Pitts decided to go with athletics. Betty Edgley decided to stay in academics. That's when Ike Gross was hired as a tennis coach. And that's when some of these coaches then made the decision. They made the decision which way they wanted to go. Gymnastics, Larry Billhartz stayed with athletics, but also he didn't separate totally. We Dick and I had again shared funding responsibility because he taught all of our gymnastics experiences in our physical education program. So Larry we kept on board, and he also and Dick provided funding for the women's program, but the facility was housed in Colvin Center. Track and field, Larry Bridges, we brought Larry Bridges on board, and he again coached track, and then given the decision he decided to stay with academics and not go into women's track. And I can't remember who was it Weiss that went with, they hired Weiss? I don't remember that exactly. But then basketball, we had J.C. Showers, and then we went with Judy Boofer. Judy Boofer, and then I kind of lost track after who they hired after Judy Boofer. But Judy Boofer there was quite. So that's kind of where we are with regards to the sports that we had.
George, what about some of your administrators? You mentioned Betty Abercrombie was your first.
She was first coordinator. Mm-hmm.
Then Janice Thompson.
Janice Thompson.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
Cheryl Bridges.
Cheryl only stayed with us probably 6 months.
Oh, okay.
She was, I hired her and I got Larry Bridges, the track coach, and a package deal. They were husband and wife.
Okay. But
they separated, and she left after about 6 months, and he stayed on this on staff. And but then let's see, after Cheryl Bridges was
Susan Hall.
Who?
Susan Hall.
Susan Hall, mm-hmm. Right. And Susan was also one who chose to go with the women's athletic program over to the athletic department with Dick Young.
George, you talk a little bit about your the recruiting process. I mean, did you actually recruit for these positions? You have regional or national search, or word of mouth, or ads, or?
I did national searches.
Mm-hmm.
I did national searches when I realized that we could offer them something that could attract them. You have to recognize the fact that once we got up to about 65,000-70,000, most of that was partial money for for salaries. But not all of it. Most of it, again, came out of academics. These people, once they went over to Dick's shop, he had the full responsibility of funding the whole package. coaches' salaries, with the exception of Bill Hart's, salaries, scholarships, whatever.
George, you told me to do a national search, for example, Ann Pitts was a local girl there in Stillwater. Did just you knew about Ann and just hired her?
I knew about Ann. I looked at, again, other applicants, but I couldn't find anyone who would come to Stillwater, Oklahoma and teach golf in the golf class and coach golf for what we could offer them. So I said to Ann, would you be interested? And she said yes, she would. That would be of interest to her. And we were fortunate to find her.
Who do you recall some of the people who were on your search committees?
Well, Betty Abercrombie was a lot of times. Pauline Winter. For the most part, we didn't have a formal committee.
It's kind of you and your head administrator for women's sports.
Yes, and as I would go to professional meetings, I would interview people and find out if they had any interest in it. If I found out they had an interest, I brought it back and we talked about them in a group meeting. Usually with, I would include probably Mary Fry. Oftentimes is one that I would use, and I would just say, take a look at this and see what you think of this. But there was no formal application and no search and screen as we know it today.
What kind of qualities, skills, experiences were you looking for in your prospective coaches?
Well, in the early years, they had to have really a teaching background, plus a coaching interest, strong coaching interest. I remember interviewing one lady for tennis. She was from a junior college out in West Texas, and she had played on the women's pro tour. And I thought, boy, if I could get her, that would be great for tennis. But when I told her what we could offer her, she kind of laughed and said, I think I'll just stay where I am, thank you. She was at a junior college, and I was offering her a major university tennis coaching program. I think about she could recruit these tennis players, but she was not. But again, remember, we're limited to facilities, and we're limited to budgets, and we're limited to scholarships, and limited to again whatever we had at that point in time.
George, a little different topic, but what was your staff and your coaches' philosophy about athletic competition and the role of the women's student athlete, for example? Was it more about winning or about participation, developing the individual? How was the philosophy, similar or different from men's sports?
Well, in the beginning, in '75, we come from play days, and so the opportunity. It was not necessarily winning, but giving students opportunity. And it was, you compete, and it's on a little different level than intramurals. You're going to compete against another institution. And as the program developed, and as we were able to put resources into it, as we were able to get coaches who had the advanced skills, then the attitude and the philosophy of coaching changed from just participation and opportunity to competition with the goal of winning. I have never been one who says you have to win to be successful. I think you have to give 100% to be successful. But if you go out there and give her 110%, you do the best job you can do. Hey, that's all you can ask. But again, that's not always a philosophy in athletics that's shared. But
how was that different from men's sports at that time?
Well, I think men's sports competed to win. Yeah, I think at that point, that stage in life, Mr. Ibed had a couple national champions. And I think that once you have that taste of blood, it's hard to not go after it again. So, the men's program was highly competitive. And I think, the women's program at that point in time was far behind that. and I can't say exactly when. Well, I would say when we moved the program over to the athletic, to become the athletic department, not just men's athletic, to become the athletic department under Dr. Richard Young. Dick, I think, again, with association of the coaches and both men's and women's, were held to a similar standard. You know, quality coaching, quality effort. If you're successful, fine. If you're not, you come under review.
You may be looking for another job.
That's right. Well, you know, you take a look and see what you got and what we've given you and those kinds of things. If and I think it's a matter that it moved at that point in time from a win-win situation just for competition.
Well, speaking of that merger, when did discussion first begin about merging the men's and women's programs? Do you recall? The day you got there?
Yeah. In my interview with Dick Young, I was on the search and screen committee when Dick Young was hired.
This would have been in 78, spring of 78.
Spring of 78, I think, thereabouts. And I think that I asked him questions about women's intercollegiate athletics and what his philosophy was and those kinds of things. But once he got on board, he and I started talking about women's intercollegiate athletics and what we could do and what he could do and how could he said, how can we help you guys in women's intercollegiate athletics, and what can we do to make it stronger and better? Well, then I went to President Com, and I said, I really feel like we need to move women's intercollegiate athletics over to an athletic department. First of all, we can't service them in athletic training. We can't service them in any kind of special meal arrangements. We can't service them with public information, with sports information. We don't have that capability in the school. So we need to move this program over to the men's program. And he agreed. And it occurred.
If you step back a little bit, were there any discussions before you talked to Dick? I mean, before you started the program, probably in 75 and to say 78.
70.
Did you have some discussions? There was a timeline of beginning to merge, and was there any discussions before Dick got here about might need to merge them?
If there were, they were limited. I remember it was in 75, I think. Yeah, 1975. There was a Title IX meeting that I went to down in Texas, Dallas, Texas. And I remember going to that meeting and thinking, boy, this is something that's going to have an impact on college sports. Mm-hmm. And I remember, again, coming back and sharing that with Vice President Moore at that point in time, and some others. I think Floyd and I had a brief discussion of this, but not saying, are you ready to take it over?
Athletic Director Floyd Gass.
Yes, right. But again, there was no real push to do that. And
Floyd just wasn't really excited about taking it over.
No, Floyd had enough on his hand, because if I recall, at that point in time, we were having some problems with the NC2A, and he was having to keep an apartment rented for NC2A members, keep him from voting.
Did you have did you visit with President Com during this period? What was his perspective on that?
Supportive, but yet.
Did he feel like it should be merged? Did he have a strong feeling one way or the other?
We didn't go to him until we were sure that this is what we wanted, Dick and I.
I guess when Larry Boger coming about that time, that Dick came in about that same time too, the new president.
Yeah, right. And I don't know whether Boger was the one who finally made the choice, or whether Com made the decision. I don't remember their tape. But I remember the discussion I had with Dr. Com. I don't remember ever discussing that with Larry Boger. Now Dick may have, but I don't know that I did.
Susan Hall was your main women's administrator.
She was coordinator of women's athletics.
How did Susan feel about the merger at that time?
Oh, she was in support of it. Yes, she was. Yeah.
Do you remember getting any sense how the regions felt about this issue?
No, I never got to that far. They're
way
up there. I never got there. I let Dick handle that.
What? George, let me kind of go back. We might have missed on our tape part of the last question. We were talking about when you first started having conversations around the possibility of merging.
Yeah.
And the last two questions we talked about was Bob Com, President Com. And what did you say about his, how he felt about the merger?
Well, he was supportive, but he was hesitant about, a total budget, major budget commitment at that point in time to women's intercollegiate athletics, simply because we didn't have in the NC2 or in the Big Eight, we didn't have a women's program going. If there was, we weren't participating in it. I don't think there was at that point in time. There were activities at the colleges, but again, there wasn't like a Big Eight basketball champion and a Big Eight golf champion, and the Big Eight had not organized at that point in time in the early 70s. So there was no real emphasis other than the incoming Title IX to be able to move women's intercollegiate ahead.
George, you mentioned that President Com was perhaps a little bit, and rightfully so, concerned about having resources to put into the program and keep it, under your aegis. By the same token, was it beginning to be understood that there's going to have to be larger investments in women's sports at that time?
Yes, he realized that, and I think it's a matter that Dick, and when we talked about this, Dick, I think, had a commitment from either President Com or President Boger. I don't remember exactly where that transition of leadership occurred in the early development of the athletic program, combined athletic program, under Dick's leadership. I think that Dick, I'm sure, had some type of commitment for increased funding when he took over the program, took women's intercollegiate, because he had to have some commitment because he took staff members with him, and he took those positions out of academics and moved them over into. This was a tremendous period of growth for the school. In academics, we moved from a Department of Physical Education with a 4-year degree in undergraduate physical education, a master's degree, and a doctorate through the College of Education, to a new program in recreation. We instituted a new program in health, all the way through from undergraduate to graduate program. So the academic program just mushroomed. It was really grew. And Colvin Center program continued on its high level. And also, incidentally, during this period of time, that we were able to, I went down in 1975 to the Special Olympics in Central State. They were the hosting Special Olympics at that point in time. And I talked with Terry Kerr, who was then director of the Special Olympic program, and I said, would you, and I had the experience with Special Olympics on the national scene. Mm-hmm. And so I had known Terry Kerr through the national scene. I said, would you ever consider moving the program to Oklahoma State? And she said, well, oddly enough that you said that, because we're outgrowing Central State. So I went back and talked with the people at Oklahoma State, and we were able to get then the Special Olympics in Stillwater, and it's been there ever since. And it's probably the most significant one-day event as far as economic impact on Stillwater of all the events that they have. When you bring in 4,000 athletes to that. And the reason I raised that question is that the coaches, men's and women's both, were helpful in providing leadership for that program. It again exemplifies the character of the people that we had in our program, not only academically and sports-wise and recreationally, but.
George, on the subject, merger of the programs, two quick questions. One, we asked earlier, but to repeat, Susan Hall was your coordinator of women's sports.
At that time, yes,
and
she was.
You said she was supportive of
Yes.
the move.
Yes, she was. Yes.
George, what was your personal opinion? I mean, pros and cons. How did you feel about the merger?
How did I feel about the merger? I felt like it was the thing to do. I felt like that if women's intercollegiate athletics was to succeed, it had to be a part of a total athletic focus, not just men's on one side, women's on the other. That's just not going to get it done. And I could see the fact that Title IX was going to put pressure on colleges and universities to give equality. And we weren't there. Oklahoma State wasn't there. And I could tell the fact that by going in and fighting the battles of the budget, that we weren't going to get, probably due consideration from when I go in against in College of Arts and Sciences, and chemistry department wants this and physics department wants that. And then they'll say physical education. Oh, what do you want? Well, I want a new building. I want a new facility. That just wasn't going to happen, and it didn't take a crystal ball to look at that. So I was in full support of, again, the merger.
What were the concerns of initially from the women's coaches being placed under the administration of the athletic department? What were they? Like loss of the spirit of amateurism, becoming second-class athletes, inequitable resource distribution, winnings, everything, philosophy. What were their concerns that you recall?
Well, I think their concerns were, first of all, are you talking about at the time of merger?
At the time of merger, when they were the parent.
When we talked about the merger and who was going to stay in academics and who was going to go to athletics, the concern was, what's going to happen to my pay? Will I get an increase? Will there be what are my responsibilities going to be? Am I still going to have to teach? Am I going to have to do that and coach? Who will be my supervisor at that point in time? And these were all questions that they raised with regards to the decision of the merger. And what kinds of scholarships will I get? Will I get additional scholarship aid? Will I have, again, Judy Buffer, I think, was saying, will I get Iva Hall at 3:30 in the afternoon? Well, the answer to that's no. not the first year. It took a few years before that problem ever resolved itself. But again, those are the kinds of things. Facility usage, sharing the facilities. They weren't so much for equal pay at that point in time because they hadn't been used to equal pay. So, I don't remember who the basketball coach was. Paul Hansen? Was that? No.
Hansen or Killingsworth? Killingsworth every year.
Yeah.
He had problems with Buffer and with volleyball.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yeah, he did have.
George, the other side of the coin, though, what were some perceived advantages that maybe the coaches were anticipating from the merger?
Well, I think the fact that they could see the fact that there is a sense here of a commitment on the university's part to help the program grow. I think they could see in athletics, in the athletic department, again, first of all, they had a leader who understood the relationship between men's and women's athletics. Dick Young is probably one of the outstanding athletic directors in this country. bar none.
There you go.
But I think they could see the fact that he could help them develop the programs, and he would fight for their programs. And once a commitment was made, and certainly in Bill Hart's situation, and in Frankie Albert's situation, you know, and in Chase Farnham's situation where they cut the programs. Those were tough decisions to make, and of course, when the mergers, they realized that they wouldn't have a job, and that was, you know, for those folks, it was kind of tough to do. But
Well, speaking of Dick Young, you know, he was hired in 1978. Many felt that he was hired in part because of his experience at Bowling Green in merging the men's and women's programs. Is that your perception?
oh yes, yeah. Dick Young is a educator as well as an athletic administrator.
The folding of the women's sports program under the umbrella of athletics department began in his first year, in that 78-79 year. In your opinion, had that decision been made to merge the sports program as part of the hiring of Dick, or even before he come on board?
No, I don't think that I don't ever remember that being discussed outside Dick and myself in an interview process. I don't remember ever, either in the search and screen committee or in any other discussion in any quarter of the university, of the fact that he was hired because he had the philosophy of merging men's and women's sports.
I had read in a couple of different publications in part of the Centennial History, you know, the OOHRP Intercollegiate Sports series that Dorsey Dallinger did, and some others that as of July 1, that the merger took place starting that day to merge the programs of 78. Of course, Dick came in actually in August of 78, so I was just trying to put that sequence together. Somebody must have, Regents or President, I guess Larry Boger just come on board, had made the decision that it was going to be merged.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, I guess the question was getting at from your perspective, was that pretty much a mandate that he had been given? I'm not sure he didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to ask Dick that question because I don't know what dialogue and discussion he'd had with with the presidents on that situation. It was discussed at our level being vice president and the dean's level. It really, and I, you know, and Dr. Kalm and I had talked about it as well too. But I don't ever recall, the fact that I think Dick Young was hired as an administrator in athletics because he had the ability, not necessarily because he was pro-women's sports.
George, can you describe your working relationship with Dick Young?
Super.
Mm-hmm. Did y'all talk regularly, communicate?
Regularly, yes. In fact, he volunteered. He wanted to teach classes in addition to being the athletic director. He had done this, and so he taught classes for us. And so I can tell you that he's an educator, and he's competent he was competent in his role in every position he went into. I was only sorry that the situation that arose where he felt he had to leave, but he's a man that would not compromise his principles, and I think that speaks well of him. And I think it's a matter that he just is probably one of, as I said earlier, he's probably one of the best athletic administrators I've ever known in my years of experience.
How effective, in your opinion, was Dick in handling the merger, the women's programs folding it with the men's programs?
Well, I think he was successful in the sense that when you have to cut programs, you really lays claim to the fact that you're going to upset some people. And Allison may have given him hell at home. But again, I think he was yes, I know he was successful in effecting the merger.
What were some of the implementation issues that were associated with the merger? What are some things that had to happen to make that happen?
Well, first of all, I think it's a matter that we had to get some feeling from the existing women's coaches that they would be willing, what their intentions were, and how then we could piece together the vacancies that he would have by people like Dr. Edsley staying with academics and those kinds of things. I think it really was a crucial time in trying to not destroy again the motivation and the interest and the desire to continue the program, and I think he did a good job of that.
Mm-hmm. What you alluded to earlier, George, just a couple minutes ago, about Dick stepping down. What do you think led to Dick stepping down as athletic director?
I think it's a matter that there were pressures both within the university and outside the university that created an atmosphere of his feeling if he did some things he would compromise his principles. And I think he's too strong an individual to do that, and he wouldn't do some of the things that he felt was being asked of him. And I think it's either asked or pressured to do. And I think it's a matter that he just said no, and I think that created in quarters, in some quarters, created a problem. And there were forces that asked for his resignation. And I told him I'd hire him as a full-time professor when if that happened. And it did happen, and I committed to him a full professorship within the school. Because when the search and screen committee, when I was interviewing him, he asked if I would consider giving him a full professorship because he wanted to teach. And I said, "You have the background? Certainly I would." And so when he resigned, we were prepared and even were preparing him an office in Colvin Center. And he'd committed to that until Washington State hired him away.
Do you feel that any of the merger issues were a factor?
No.
No.
No, not at all. No, not at all.
There's no concern from Regent's administration about his handling of merger of
No.
programs?
Not at all.
Okay. That's clear enough. Appreciate your candor. Well, in your opinion, what was President Boger's relationship with Dick, and how supportive was he of Dick on the issue of the merger of women's sports?
I think he was very supportive. In fact, I think it was during his first year or first years that the merger was effected. I can't remember when Dr. Kahn retired and Dr. Boger came on board, but their relationship was strong, even in the beginning, and I think even at the end of Dick's tenure, his working relationship with Larry Boger was strong. I don't think, and Dick can answer that question better than I, but from an outsider's view, I did not get the idea that Dr. Boger and Dr. Young were at odds about, again, the way he ran the program or the merger of the program.
Of the promises, commitments, actual and implied that were made to women's sports programs, did some of those promises remain unfulfilled in their early years, do you think?
Oh, I think you'd have to ask Dick that question. I think it's a matter that, from an outsider's view, I think eventually they were satisfied. I'm not sure that they were satisfied as quickly and as timely as maybe the coaches who moved would like to have had it done. But I think eventually you have to look at the program now and say, that's a quality program. It's it's run at the same level as the men's program.
What do you think were the immediate benefits of women's programs after the merger in those first 2-3 years?
I think it's a matter that they had the resources of support services.
The facilities you mentioned earlier, maybe.
Of the support services. I'm talking about athletic training, talking about, again, sports information. I'm talking about travel, someone handling travel, scheduling. I think all this, again, they realized and recognized that that's, again, to their benefit. I don't know that at least I was not aware of comments coming from coaches that they made a mistake or they wish they'd stayed in academics. So many academic people thought that they should have gone to athletics because they could see the benefits that some of the coaches at that point in time were getting.
You sort of answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But fast forwarding to today, have most of the positive expectations of women's sports been achieved? And if so, in what ways?
Well, I would say probably. With the exclusion of volleyball, I think Oklahoma State probably needs to get back into volleyball. The reason I say that is that most of the high schools in Oklahoma have women's volleyball. And I think Oklahoma State is one of the few state colleges or universities that doesn't have a women's volleyball program. So that denies some of the women who want to go to Oklahoma State and want to play volleyball. They can't do that. I think that for the most part, the programs are conducted at a high level. I think, again, you have the traditional sports of men's basketball and men's football carrying a lot of the weight with funding, and the women's sports programs on most college campuses do not have enough income to carry their own programs' weight in budget consideration. So there's still a disparity in women's sports and men's sports in financial income, but there's been a disparity in men's sports as well program too. Track and field brings in absolutely nothing. Well, maybe a little bit, I don't know, but very little.
Kind of what they call the Olympic sports versus the football, basketball.
Right, yeah. At Oklahoma State, you got football, basketball, and baseball are your revenue, and wrestling are your revenue-generating sports. Probably football and basketball are the only two that probably have enough income to carry their budget. I don't think baseball does, and I don't think wrestling does. That's speculation on my part. But certainly tennis doesn't. Now, Mike did a pretty good job when he was a golf coach of raising money. Now I can't say that golf, and I don't know. I don't know now with the new coach there, but I think Mike did a pretty good job of raising money to keep his golf program going. So his was one of the unusual sport programs, other than the three majors that are revenue generator. So again, there's this discrepancy of monies that the programs are able to generate.
So you said now more not men's versus women, but the football, basketball, major revenue sports versus the rest of the sports, men's and women's.
Well, yeah, football pretty much has to and basketball pretty much have to carry the income, major income of the sport. And without probably the income that comes from the bowls and the television packages and all those kinds of things. I was just reading this week, I think it was this week in Tulsa World, the fact that the amount of money that the television Big 12 is now negotiating between with Nebraska and Missouri, trying to or thinking about going into the Big 10, and why would they go into the Big 10? The difference being between the television packages for the Big 12 is around $7 million per university, and in the Big 10 it's upwards, I think, around $15 million. That's a difference that would probably catch your attention.
George, another issue beyond the mergers is about the same time that OSU would have been merging their men's and women's programs. It wasn't too long before the NCAA essentially took over governance for women's sports, and which had previously been done through the Association of Intercollegiate Athletics for Women, AIAW.
Yeah, right.
Would like to ask you a couple of questions about that.
Okay.
Your perspective. Were the missions and goals of the two organizations different? Do you remember how they were similar, how they were different?
Yeah, NC2A pretty much, I remember when that was going on, and in our professional meetings we were talking about, we hoped that the women didn't make the same mistakes the men made in their governance and rules. But I think the women's programs in NC2A and the men's programs aren't too far apart now. I think there are rules and regulations and things that they have to do, and the things that they do are pretty much the same nowadays. I think they haven't varied too much.
But back in that era, I guess it's around 1980 or so that they were beginning to change. How would the philosophies have been different? AIW, what was their major philosophy about women's sports?
There wasn't the emphasis probably on competition, like tournaments, these kinds of things. AIAW had tournaments, but they were slow compared to the men's program for years. They were slow in getting into tournament play, that level of competition. They were not concerned, AIAW was not concerned with television, with money generated from television. They were primarily interested in competition. It differs in the sense that men's programs started that way back 1800s, and they came through the same progress and the same process. And so the women's program was just a step and a half behind. The AIW was a step and a half behind the NC2A. And so when the AIW gave over to the NC2A, there was significant difference in rules. There was significant difference in again, competition, levels of competition, numbers of competition. AIW didn't have a lot of, I'm not sure whether they had field hockey tournaments and lacrosse tournaments and those kinds of things, which we still don't have a lot of those out here in Oklahoma, but on the East Coast you'll find that competition pretty strong. Mm-hmm. AIAW wasn't as as strong nationally as the NC2A. Didn't have the money. AI did not have the money that the NC2A had because they had the benefit of television.
You're saying, George, the government's changed. The effect it had on women's sports was perhaps more competition, more varied in terms of tournaments, national competition.
Yes.
Just the amount, the breadth and depth of
Yes.
competition.
Agreed.
How did it affect the recruiting rules? Much do you know?
Well, yeah, because when the women went under NC2A, there were some things that coaches couldn't do that they've been doing for years. I'm not sure what the limitations were on that, but our coaches could do almost anything they want to do when we're running play days and we're running low-level AIAW activities. But, we weren't out heavily recruiting the kids. Although, now that I say that, I know some of our coaches did recruit. I think Ann recruited from the beginning. Ann Pitts recruited tried to recruit strong golfers, and Larry Billhartz tried to recruit strong gymnastics people. And so, they did, but they didn't have all the rules and regulations the NC2A has.
What were the feelings on campus that time? Do you recall, positive and negative, about the NCAA taking over governance in women's sports? You remember much conversation?
I don't think students had a reaction to that. I don't think the faculty had a reaction to that.
Student athletes, the coaches themselves,
I think the coaches knew that they were going to have new sets of rules to. But again, I think they were challenged by that, and I'm not sure that played any role in the part of those who stayed behind in the academic department that didn't move. I don't know whether that was part of their decision to stay or not. But at the same token, I think the coaches that went over with a renewed challenge and a renewed sense of vigor. The fact that they felt that they would be better off over there.
Continue to look at things in larger context. You would have taken the position that OSU just a couple years, or about the same time actually, Title IX was changed. Is that right? You come on board Oklahoma State in in 74. Was that the same year Title IX?
Title IX started basically in the early 70s, but
72 maybe.
Yeah, early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But again. It didn't start to hit the forefront until they started holding these national conferences on Title IX.
Can you talk a little bit about the Title IX legislation itself?
It just says basically the fact that women's intercollegiate sports has to be treated equally and fairly as men's intercollegiate sports. And now, I don't remember all of the regulations of Title IX, but that's kind of the sum total of what I recall is the fact that there has to be equality. Now, you're not going to get equality between softball and football because you got different number of people participating, and there are specific rules that I don't remember that states again how equality will be determined, is to be determined. Comes back oftentimes, I think, also to student population. How many women do you have in the program? How many men do you have in the school, and those kinds of things? And it comes back to that. And I don't know, I can't answer that question with regards to specifics.
What were your colleagues? You told me earlier that you were going to national conferences, and this had to start appearing on your radar screen, on your agendas and discussions. What were some of the early discussions that you were calling around Title IX?
How are you going to deal with this? Mm-hmm. I chaired a group called the College and University Administrators Council. These are the deans and directors of schools throughout the United States. And each year we had a summer conference. Title IX was, again, topic of at least two of those, as I remember. And the discussion was, okay, and most of us had women's intercollegiate, AIAW, women's intercollegiate athletics, whatever we wanted to call them. Most of us had the responsibility of women's intercollegiate sports. And the question comes, well, how are you going to fund it? How do you fund this? You know,
Get it to an equal.
yeah, right. Well, at that point in time, we didn't actually know what the equality meant in Title IX.
Establishing guidelines
Yeah,
yet. No?
right. We hadn't necessarily seen those guidelines. Most of us hadn't, and that's when we said, "Well, hey, we better get to some of these workshops to find out what all is involved in Title IX and what does it mean." And so the first one, I can't remember exactly what year, it was 72, 73, there in our summer workshop that we talked about that. But again, I think in later we realized the fact that there would be different rules, and that there would be formulas, and that there would be criteria that we would have to follow. And I think most of people in academics realize and say, hey, you'd better put them together or you're going to really be in trouble.
And you actually had this first AHA experience from your Chicago State, I guess, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, in Chicago State. And then I remember talking with people from Iowa State. They had a men's and women's program separate. And their women's department ran their women's intercollegiate program, and their athletic program was separate from their men's physical education department. And so when I came to Oklahoma State, you know, the academic program was combined, men's and women's. We didn't have a men's physical education program and a women's physical education. It was just physical education. And so I remember talking with, the name slips me now, the head of the women's department up there, who was in one of our meetings, and she was saying the fact that they were going to have major problems. And so again, I think most of us realized that this whole aspect of Title IX was a force to be reckoned with, and that the universities would have to abide by it.
How did it impact your position, George, when you first got there in HPLS, the Administration of Women's Sports, before that merger happened? How did that start impacting your programs? As you looked at Title IX and you've taken over, you know, your position at Oklahoma State, what things did you see you had to start putting into place?
Well, first of all, I thought we'd have to have coaches. And these are people that were dedicated to coaching, and not just driving the bus or driving the car or just, you know, being out there chaperoning kinds of things. That they needed to be able to have the skills to be able to impart to these athletes. And so that meant that I had to find people who had the skills and had the ability to coach. So I tried to work on that and to deal with that in hiring practices, not only of coaches, but of faculty people that would have that kind of background where I could combine both academics and athletics.
What in your people, what were the concerns about Title IX early on? You know, then I ask the flip side of it. And what were some initial concerns about Title IX legislation?
Well, I think the major concern was, how in the world can we do this? How can this be done? How can you equate football to softball, or how can you equate football to tennis, or how can you equate basketball, men's basketball to women's basketball? That was the big concern. Is it how's this? How do you do this kind of?
Sounds good, but can it really be done?
Yeah,
Kind of
right.
attitude.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was the big concern.
What were people's hopes for Title IX? What did they hope would happen early on out of Title IX?
Early on, I don't think anyone. I don't think that they had the knowledge of Title IX to know what impact and how long it would take to comply with Title IX. Donna, what's Donna's last name? She was at the University of Texas when I was there, and I'm trying to think of her name, but it eludes me now. She was a commissioner. Well, she did a pretty good job of trying to motivate colleges and universities to move as quickly as they could on Title IX, because she says it's coming, it's coming, and sure enough, it came.
Ooh. George, in your opinion, what's been the legacy of Title IX after almost 40 years?
Well, I think it has brought women's intercollegiate sports to the forefront. It's given it maybe not the same position as men's intercollegiate athletics, but close to it, if not. In some instances, it's exceeded. In other instances, it hasn't. Again, depending on the local situations of what the perspective. But I think nationally, Title IX has given women's sports an opportunity to grow. Like we said earlier, back in high school, women didn't participate. If you sweat, you didn't want to sweat when you took physical education, because you're a woman, and women glow. They don't sweat.
And they perspire. They don't sweat.
Yeah, right. They glow. They glow. But again, I think it's given women's sports an opportunity that they would have never had. I really feel like that sports programs would have not been, women's sports program would not be where it is today without Title IX.
Do you feel like it's fulfilled the expectations of its early advocates?
I think it's to a degree, yes. Whether or not it's a total, I don't know, but I think it's for the most part it has helped, and it has again reached a level that the early advocates hoped that it would.
In some ways, has it realized the fears of its early critics?
Well, there are some critics that are emotional and are not necessarily rational in their criticism, but they'll never, would never satisfy them. But for the most part, I think in general, Title IX has again satisfied most of the critics.
In your opinion, is there anything that remains to be done to ensure an equitable relationship between men's and women's sports?
I think they have to continue to work at it, and to continue to oversee the operations of intercollegiate athletics, both in men's and the women's program, and try to achieve the equality that Title IX implies.
George, looking back on your time in the administration of women's sports at OSU, what were some high points I'm talking for women's intercollegiate sports during your period there and your administration? Were there some milestones for you, some high points for you?
Well, yeah, I think it's a matter that the fact that we were able to hire coaches that had the skills that would permit our athletes to learn and to train and to acquire the skills that they were seeking. I think that I think the merger of women's intercollegiate athletics and men's intercollegiate athletics at Oklahoma State was a high point for me. I think it, without Dick Young's help and philosophy, I don't know how much longer we would have gone without it. But he brought it into being.
As you indicated, it might have been a little more difficult with his predecessor.
Yeah.
You don't have to reply. Rhetorical question. Well, changing a little bit, aside from women's sports, George, can you share some highlights of your administrative career at Oklahoma State? We focused intensely on women's sports, but just generally in your time as head of the HPAL.
Yeah, I've talked about, my involvement in encouraging Special Olympics to come to Oklahoma State University. I think that's a highlight, and I think that speaks for itself, not only for Oklahoma State, but for the community of Stillwater and what it's done for them over these course of years. The fact that we were able to get the women's intercollegiate program merged and successful and off and running, it was a highlight. Being able to develop quality academic programs in health and physical education and leisure through the doctoral program and become probably the flagship of Oklahoma and one of the flagships of the Southwest academically is for me a highlight. Also, it was during those periods from 74 to probably 90, we had growth and quality in every phase of our operation. I was so proud of our staff. They were just people like Shelsky and Mary Fry and Ada Van Whitley, people like that. I just got an email from Sid Gonslin, who was only with us for a couple years, and he said, Dr. Oberle, he said, I want you to know that I have really reflected on my time at Oklahoma State and experiences that I had had there, and he said, I want you to know that I'm using a lot of your philosophy and a lot of things that I learned at Oklahoma. He's vice president of student services at Southern Mississippi.
Oh, okay.
So, watching our students, we've had 2 students within the last 10 years to become national presidents of our national organization of AHPERD.
Wow.
That speaks well for that. That's a period of time when Oklahoma State supported our program. Since that period of time, I understand that there have been changes made, and that philosophy of unity and purpose of sports and athletics and recreation and physical education and health, and this is just no longer there because it's been separated. Another highlight for me is the creation of the Wellness Center. I went to a conference in Denver years ago, and I heard this one person talk about wellness, and that was a new topic for me. Wellness. I heard health and fitness and all that. I heard this, and he put wellness into a concept for me, and I brought it back and got a hold of Ron Beer, and I said, Ron, I want to develop this program. Mm-hmm. And bless Dr. Harrison's heart, he was able to put together a mobile laboratory, and we took it out to business and industry throughout the state of Oklahoma.
A.B. Harrison.
A.B. Harrison. And he and Mac McCrory and that staff, Robin Purdy, and again, took that motor fitness lab all over the state and helped again identify stress factors for at that point in time was the senior administrators in the business and industry. Well, that led to the wellness facility, the establishment of the wellness facility, and that was another highlight of mine, is with being able to put that together. I released Jim Rogers from his health chairship and put him in charge of raising funds for the new facility. And again, students stepped forward and put in $1 million, and we raised $1 million and put together the first freestanding wellness facility in the United States. And since that time, that model has been replicated throughout the country.
MB Bud Sharatine involved in that project.
Bud Sharatine, yes, right. A few stories on that one too.
Well, in addition, do you have some special memories of your time at OSU generally?
Oh, I think it's a matter that all of my time at Oklahoma State is a total wonderful memory for me. Staff, my bosses, all of them, they were good. They learned how to say no to me that I would accept. But they were very supportive. And during that period of 74 to 75, that the school just flourished, and it became, again, the quality institution in Oklahoma that I had hoped that it would be. We were nationally recognized, and we grew graduate students from all over the country. And all over the world. In England, China, we had graduate students from all over the world, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful time for me.
This was 1974 to 1993.
Basically from early 1990. I stepped down, I think, in 1992, and told them that I wanted to retire in '93. And that I wanted to finish my doctoral students. I wanted to finish them and make sure that they got finished before and they wouldn't have to be stuck with someone else at that. So we did that, and so that was a period of and the staff. My staff, I inherited some great people, and I hired some great people.
Looking back on your career, how do you hope people remember George Oberle?
Well, I think I'd like for them to develop the fact that I was a professional, that I had the professional ethics and the principles that stood for quality, and that I was a developer. I developed programs, and I've developed again people, and I again was one who was creative, and one who was willing to go that extra mile to make sure that students had an opportunity. I still have a student who is a black student who was finishing up his doctorate with us when I came on board. And there was some question of whether or not he deserved to have the doctor's degree. And I went to bat for him, and I pulled him aside and I said, "No, you've got to do this, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do this if you want to graduate." In that course of that year, he did 180. He died. And to this day, he still says, "Dr. Oberle," he says, "you saved my life." So there are the pride I have in our products and our students and the things that they've done. We've had, as I say, 2 national presidents. We've had one, another student who was president of a national association. That's the quality of students we have. And people like Betty Edsley, who's a quality teacher, outstanding teacher, Pauline Winter, who was on staff, but she just called him Betty Abercrombie, who is revered by many, many people throughout this state. So they're quality people. As I say, I inherited quality staff, and people like Mary Fry, who not only put in time, but she and her husband put in money to develop the outdoor program that we had out of Lake Carl Blackwell. And, you know, our staff gave well and beyond. And Chuck Shelsky and all the work that he did for us. I've said to the Vice President of Student Services, I said, I hope that one of these days that the Student Services will develop a wall of honor or some kind of way of acknowledging people like Kent Bunker, who was there on staff when I was there, still is there, and I don't know whether he's served at any other institution or not, but he ran one of the best intramural programs in the country, and he was again one of the people who again developed the new wellness facility or the new Colvin Center, and along with students, and they designed and did that, and that's a fantastic facility. So I just, you know, I hope that they would remember George Oberle as a person who had a love for people and a love for what he did.
Appreciate it. Thanks. George, kind of give us a wrap up again after you left Stillwater in '93.
93.
Can you talk a little bit your career after that?
Okay, I left. I headed back to Indiana, where my family, most of my family live in, and I got a call from Barry University asking me if I would be interested in coming down and giving them 3 to 5 years of consulting work.
Where is that, George?
Barry University. It's in Miami Shores, Florida, just north of the Florida itself, or of Miami itself. And so I went down to. They convinced me to come down, and I went down. As I tell the dean, I said no to him first, and the second time she called. She said, "Can I come out and visit with you at Stillwater?" And I knew that she was serious when she said she wanted to come to Stillwater, because she normally wouldn't come to Stillwater unless it was really very important, because as you know, Stillwater is a kind of unique place to be. It's
not a destination.
It's not on the way to any place unless it is Stillwater. So she came, and as I've often said, she didn't. She said we said she could stay with us, and she said she wouldn't leave until she got us to commit to come to Barry, and so we did.
George, how old were you at this time?
I was 66 at that time.
And you really planned to retire and stayed retired at that time. Right.
I had, and well, no, because I had planned to go back to Ball State. I had 14 years in Indiana teachers retirement, and I needed one more year to fully vest in my retirement program at Ball State, and so the chairman of the department there was a good friend of mine. He said, "Come on back." He says, "I'll help you. We'll find something for you to do." And I said, "Okay." So when I retired, when I left Indiana State as assistant dean, and I was making $18,000 a year, and your retirement's based on the best of the 3 years, last 3 years, and so $18,000 doesn't do much for you for retirement. So he said, "Come on back." He said, "We'll get your retirement up." So I said, "Okay." But they convinced me to come to Barry, so I went to Barry instead of that. And I said I'd give them 3 to 5 years, and I gave them 3 years, and I developed again their academic program for them, and worked with an outstanding again administrator, and Dr. Jean Serra. She was the associate athletic director at Missouri before she went down to to Miami to become the dean down there, and she said, "You know more about the academics than I do. You've spent your life in it." She said, most of my life has been spent in athletics. And so we worked well together, and she was very supportive of what we wanted to do. And she created probably one of the strongest Division II academic athletic programs. They are scholar athletes there, and so they are outstanding in almost everything that they do. And they're several national champions. So we were there 3 years, and I retired and went over to Sarasota, where we now live full time. And then we were over there about 2 years, and I got a call from her and saying, could I visit with you? And I said, okay, now what's it all about now? She said, I just want to visit with you. And I said, okay, come on over. So she came over to Sarasota from Miami, and she said, I have a project I'd like for you to do. So I got to start a regional campus in our field in health and physical education and recreation in St. Petersburg. And so Barry University now has a regional campus in St. Petersburg. And so I spent 2 years in developing that program for them, for Barry, and hired one of my OSU students who's now taken over my job there. And so
Who's that?
Lita Hicks, Dr. Lita Hicks.
Okay.
She was a graduate of ours at Oklahoma State, and so I've enjoyed again Barry University. It was a good place to create. It was my last hurrah in creation. I tell them.
So you never got back to Ball State, did you?
I didn't go back to Ball State. No. John still mad at me. Said, I got this job all ready for you, and you didn't come back. But
George, over the years, I know you from your resume, you many times received recognition and awards, and I can say I know you wouldn't because you're too humble, but been regionally and nationally recognized. Could you share some of those recognitions that have been most meaningful to you?
Yeah, I think probably starting athletics has always been an integral part of my life. I coached the first 15 years of my professional life, and I've never regretted it, and I always kind of missed a little bit of it. But it started back when high school. In athletics, if you achieve a little success, it kind of motivates you to want a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So I was successful in high school in making some all-star teams. And then went on to college, not on an athletic scholarship, but on an academic scholarship because I had good grades. And I wanted to go to Indiana University, but I was only 145 pounds, and they didn't feel like that I probably could handle that. I played guard on the football team, high school football team at 145. But that's when we played the single wing, and that I was a pulling guard, so that meant I had speed to get out there and to get in somebody's way. But again, I ended up going to a little place called Earlham College, and a school of about 1,000, and I was successful there in attaining all state awards in football there, and then later. But again, when I came back to Earlham to coach, my 1955 baseball team won the conference. First time in history of Earlham that any of their teams had won a conference championship. And so my 1955 baseball team, and I was voted coach of the year. And our kids, in fact, just 2005, we celebrated our 50th year, and the team came back together, and we all went into the Hall of Fame together, and that was a neat experience. But I've been blessed. One of the things that has been significant for me was my working with Special Olympics. I've worked with Special Olympics since inception back in the early 60s. And we started the Special Olympics in Indiana, and I've served on several international game, again, screening committees and committees to ensure quality. But it was my work in Special Olympics that I guess got me got the attention of President Reagan, and he appointed me to the National Council, National Council on Disability, and it was during that period of time that we were the ones who wrote the Americans with a Disability Act. So the Americans with Disability Act is now the responsibility of the Americans with Disability Act is the responsibility of the National Council on Disability. And so the 6 years that I served under President Reagan, and then President, gosh, I'm having a senior moment now. Reagan,
President Clinton?
No, Clinton's the one that asked me to move over and let someone else take my position.
Okay.
President Bush, the first President Bush. So I served 6 years in that capacity, and it was during that period of time. And so that's probably the most significant worldwide event that I was a part of. And again, I've been blessed. I've been blessed with honors in many functions, and we won't go on to that. You have the resume.
What about with your National Association in Physical Education? Have you been a national officer?
Yes.
Or whatever,
Yeah.
Maybe can you share some?
I've served on the Board of Governors and of the National Association. American Alliance for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance is the national organization which I've been a part of. I started attending professional meetings in 1956 with that group. So, I think I probably, my wife will remind me that I probably only missed 3 meetings since 1956. But I still, this was the first year that I attended, year before last, but I didn't attend this year because of my illness. But again, it was my professional life has been really rewarding for me. I served on national boards, and I served as a National Association president, and served in a variety of positions nationally. I also served internationally on my officiating career. We didn't talk about my officiating career.
Oh, no.
No, we didn't, did we?
No, I didn't even keep it back.
You didn't even remember I had the officiating career.
No, I've forgotten it.
Well, thank you for not remembering.
Sorry about that.
No, I started officiating back when I was had just graduated from college and had gone back to Earlham College, and I started officiating because when I went back to Earlham, and my pay was $3,000 a year, but I got free room and board because I was assistant men's head resident of a dormitory. But I was also assistant football coach, and the head football coach wanted me to go out and recruit. Well, now on $3,000 a year, you don't, and their budget was very limited too. So I took up officiating to go out and to start to scout the football players. So from that, then I got into officiating basketball and got into to again officiate high school basketball, and then into college basketball, and then luckily enough to get into international basketball. I worked. The first major college I worked in was Missouri Valley or the Ohio Valley Conference, and then I worked the Big Ten, and I worked Missouri Valley, and I worked the Big Eight, and I've worked NAIA tournament for 6 years, and that's the limits you can work a tournament in the NAIA, 6 years, and you have to retire. I worked NIT tournament, basketball tournament, and I worked the NC2A when we had major division and small college. And I worked at small college tournament 3 years, and then I worked. Luckily enough, I was selected as the United States official to represent the United States in the University World Games in Bucharest, Romania in 1981. So I went over and represented us and officiated basketball in those games in 1981. And then came back, and the next year I figured was about it. So I retired in 1982 or 83, I think. In basketball.
Appreciate how many years you started in 56?
56, yeah.
So nearly 30 years there.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
glad you
my knees will tell you.
That's right. George, what else we left out, Ben? Anything you'd like to share?
I think that's it. I think that's significant enough. I think if you find anything in the resume that I'll send with you, well, you can add to it or whatever you want to do or whatever you want. I don't know.
Appreciate it, George. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for the opportunity.